Good morning. Good to have you with us. I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Thank you for being here on this Wednesday morning. World leaders are gathering here in New York for another day of the UN General Assembly.
The war in Ukraine, of course, took center stage yesterday as President Biden addressed world leaders. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky was there listening from the audience. President Biden called on world leaders to stand together with Ukraine to defend the country's freedom.
Russia's price for peace is Ukraine's capitulation, Ukraine's territory, and Ukraine's children. If you allow Ukraine to be carved up, is the independence of any nation secure? I'd respectfully suggest the answer is no.
Joining us this morning, NBC News White House correspondent Mike Bemley and Ambassador John Herbst, former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine and senior director of the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center. Mike, let's just kick things off. What were the big headlines from President Biden's address?
So for a president, this UN General Assembly speech is kind of like the State of the Union address, right? There's a little bit of a laundry list. You cover a lot of ground. The president talking about interesting comments on artificial intelligence, for instance, the need to deal with the climate crisis. But the common theme really was about protecting, preserving, strengthening democracy around the world. And there's no clearer example of that fight right now than the war in Ukraine. You heard the stakes as the president laid them out. What happens if the world does not continue to support Ukraine at this moment? And so this is a really important opportunity for the president to try to galvanize support at a time when it might be fading. We look at the polls and see that support, not just here in the U.S., but around the world, is not where it was when this war started. And so we're going to see that continue. And the president's democracy message is both for a global audience and a domestic audience. He was doing some fundraisers here and talked about democracy being on the ballot in 2024 as well.
Absolutely. Also, I got to say, don't love the traffic this brings to town, but what a treat it is to have two of our virtual guests on set with us. Ambassador Herbst, I want to pull up some numbers here in just a second. So the speech comes at a time when support is kind of starting to wane for this defense in Ukraine. Here it is right here on your screen. A CNN poll last month showed that 51% of the people surveyed believe the U.S. has done enough, as you can see here, to help Ukraine in the fight against Russia, compared to 48% who want America to do more. Back at the start of this, 62% thought that America should be doing more. Do you think that Biden's remarks kind of spur more of that, or not necessarily?
I think the main reason why we've seen a drop in support is we're not seeing the truly nasty images that we saw in the first month or two after the Russian big invasion. But there's a second factor. The way we are talking about this American aid for Ukraine is not the proper way to understand it. Putin's objectives in Ukraine are only a prelude to nasty ambitions he has for us. If he were to win this war in Ukraine, then his next move is going to be on our NATO allies, maybe the Baltic states, maybe Poland, maybe Romania, in which case we would have to pay a great deal more to help defend them, and American lives would be lost in defending them. So when we send $40–50 billion a year of aid to Ukraine, which approximately is 3% of our defense budget, we are defending our own national interests in the smartest way possible. And no American is going to object to spending 2 or 3% of our defense budget as part of protecting America's interest in Europe.
Right. It's President Zelensky who can perhaps make the best argument, Mike, and he delivered an impassioned speech, angry at times. What was his big message for the General Assembly?
You know, the last time President Zelensky was able to come in person to the UN was before this war began, and he compared the UN to a retired superhero who forgot how great they once were. And we heard President Zelensky again yesterday really challenging the UN itself, saying that it's not just Ukraine at the moment. As the ambassador lays out, if Russia is allowed to win in Ukraine, it's going to press that advantage even further. It's weaponizing nuclear power, as he warned. Listen to more of what the president had to say in this speech.
Ukraine is doing everything to ensure that after Russian aggression, no one in the world will dare to attack any nation. We must be united to make it, and we'll do it.
Perhaps the most pointed part of Zelensky's speech, he talked about Russia engaged in some shady deals with some other countries, maybe to try to bring this to a resolution. He said Russia cannot be trusted. Just ask Prigozhin. We know what happened to Prigozhin recently.
Absolutely. Ambassador Herbst, as Mike pointed out, I mean, this is the first time he's been here in a while, remained in Ukraine last year during the UN General Assembly. What message does that send that he is here, that he did make the trip?
I think the principal reason he came to the UNGA is that he intended to go to the White House. I think address number one for him is the White House. And since he was going to be in country, he came to UNGA. But his message is that Ukraine is under siege. It's a war that violates every principle. and he needs support. But the support comes first and foremost from the West, from the United States and our allies and partners.
As the ambassador mentions, Zelensky's going to be in Washington tomorrow. Real quickly, Mike, what can we expect from that?
Well, we heard Speaker McCarthy yesterday saying he has some tough questions for President Zelensky. He wants to know what this money is being used for, what the money we've already spent has been used for. We know skepticism among Republicans in particular is going to be an issue, as the president has asked for billions more for Ukraine, and he's going to have to convince those Republicans as we have this funding fight coming up in 10 days.
Mike Memoli, Ambassador Herbst, great to have you here in New York with us. Thank you so much for kicking us off this morning.
Thank you.
We're going to head to Capitol Hill now, where Republican infighting continues to paralyze the House, with fears growing that a government shutdown looks increasingly likely. Yesterday, House Speaker Kevin McCarthy had to pull a resolution that would have kept the government open past that September 30th deadline because he didn't have enough votes. NBC News congressional correspondent Julie Serkin joins us now with the latest. So, Julie, where do things stand right now? What do the holdouts want?
Yeah, and Republican leadership was defeated just a couple hours after McCarthy pulled that vote on a defense bill. Republicans voting with Democrats against that, just to show you where we are right now. Defense, of course, usually a top priority for Republicans. Look, things are a mess right now. We're now midweek and the week before the government shuts down. Republicans don't have a clear pathway forward, and forget negotiating with Democrats or even trying to pass a bill across the Democratic-controlled Senate. They can't even get there on their own side of the aisle. Take a listen to some comments from two Republicans from Florida, two Republican lawmakers who are really on the other side of this issue. Watch.
I'm doing everything I can to assemble a coalition to defeat the Donald CR. I believe that it is really kind of frivolous in the cuts because they only occur for 30 days.
I would challenge my colleague from Florida to create a coalition that tries to actually get a victory for the American people. If he wants to have a personal thing with me going back and forth, he's entitled to, but I don't care about that foolishness. I want to win.
We can't blame Joe Biden and the Democrats for why the Republican-controlled House of Representatives hasn't passed single-subject spending bills. That's our fault. So we have to deal with that. We will likely have to endure some degree of a shutdown.
Now, Byron Donalds, who you heard from there before Gates, he came together with members of what's known as the Main Street Caucus. There are two Republican groups who agree on different sides of the aisle when it comes to spending. They came together to try to get a short-term government funding bill across the finish line. That bill was pulled, as you mentioned, because of the lack of votes.
So, Julie, Speaker McCarthy has to make a lot of deals with this group to even get this position. Now, some lawmakers threatening to call for his removal if he works with Democrats. It's a threat he constantly faces. Is there a path forward where he can keep his job as Speaker and also keep the government running?
That's the big question, right? Because it's looking more and more likely that McCarthy might have to work across the aisle to keep the government open. That's because his own party won't get there in terms of votes on any kind of agreement to keep the government open, even in a temporary basis. You heard from Congressman Matt Gaetz there in that clip. He's one of the top lawmakers who are trying to essentially remove McCarthy from his position, oust him from his chair. And it's really not clear that McCarthy can do anything to appease that group who are frustrated with him, who feel like they can't trust him, especially after McCarthy made a deal with President Biden to avoid a default crisis back in May. So this is a really tough situation for McCarthy. And again, as Mike Memoli, my colleague, pointed out, we just have days until the government shuts down. And it's not like something that the House can just pass through, right? It's got to make its way to the Senate before it can make its way to the president's desk. So still a really long way to go for McCarthy.
So we know House Republicans have a slim majority in the House. That's why some House Democrats have actually started discussions with moderate Republicans on a backup plan. Can they pass a measure that would force a vote without Speaker McCarthy's help or without more conservative members?
They technically could. It's what's known as a discharge petition. Republicans can come along with Democrats to try to get something out. We know that a group of moderate Republicans, for example, met with leadership yesterday to try to talk about a path forward. But they're really running out of time here. And again, if this is something that McCarthy, and ultimately he has to agree to what is put on the floor. McCarthy controls the floor. That's part of his position as Speaker. If he does anything, even puts an inch forward to deal with Democrats here, which again, he might have to keep the government open, then his position is threatened. And we already heard from those lawmakers who want to take his gavel away from him. It's not really clear how McCarthy's going to get out of this situation, right? It's not looking good for the rest of this week. Leadership already pulled that one vote. They might try to do it again as it comes later in this week. But really, that short-term government funding measure that, by the way, doesn't include any of President Biden's asks with Ukraine, with disaster aid, with some of this relief, they're really going to have to figure this out, and it's going to come down to the wire. If a package that has border security and that cuts spending levels in the way that it does, outlined in this 30-day stopgap funding measure, doesn't even have the votes to pass the House, doesn't even have the votes to pass the rule, the procedural step, before it comes to a full vote, that's how you know they're in trouble.
All right, you see it right there on the screen. Countdown to a shutdown. Julie Sirkin, thank you so much.
Well, this morning, a Delaware judge is weighing whether to allow Hunter Biden to submit his plea remotely in connection to those 3 felony gun charges brought against the president's son last week. The prosecution has until today to submit their argument for having Biden appear in person. According to documents submitted by Hunter's legal team, he will be pleading not guilty to those 3 charges. His team argues Hunter does not need to be in court to give that statement, but prosecutors objected to the move on Monday, stalling the case from moving forward. NBC News Justice and Intelligence correspondent Ken Delanian joins us now for more. Hey, Ken, great to see you. So tell us, what are we learning here from these documents about why prosecutors are opposed to the video conference request, as well as why Biden's legal team wants this in the first place?
Good morning, Savannah. Well, as you said, prosecutors will file a document today explaining in detail why they oppose this request. Hunter Biden's lawyers say that this is simply a matter of saving time and money, that he shouldn't have to travel across the country from his home in Los Angeles merely to utter the words not guilty in a court in Delaware, that they can do this via video conference, as has been done, particularly since the pandemic, very often in these cases. And so we'll just have to see what the judge rules.
Ken, while we have you, I want to switch gears a little bit. Attorney General Merrick Garland is expected to appear before the House Judiciary Committee later today. This is to face questions over his oversight of the Justice Department. Still sort of related here because we assume the Hunter Biden investigation will likely be a part of this hearing. What are you looking for today in this hearing?
Absolutely, Savannah. The Hunter Biden probe will be a big part of what Republicans are raising at this hearing. This is an annual oversight hearing. We got an early look at some of Merrick Garland's prepared remarks, and he's going to push back as aggressively as I've seen him do against Republican charges that the DOJ has been politicized. He's going to say, I'm not the president's lawyer, and I'm not taking orders from Congress about who to prosecute either. And more than that, he's going to point out that some of the rhetoric, particularly coming from the Republican side, has led, in his view, to threats against line prosecutors and line FBI agents. And he says that's really dangerous and it shouldn't happen. Particularly, his point is that people like him, the Attorney General, they're used to the slings and arrows of partisan fights, but that it shouldn't imperil the safety of public servants who are just trying to do their jobs, which is something that's happened and we've reported on. There's been a huge uptick in threats against the FBI and against the Justice Department since these investigations of Donald Trump have heated up. Savannah.
All right, Ken Delanian, thank you very much for your reporting.
Now to the United Auto Workers strike. The union is setting a new deadline for a deal with the big 3 automakers, or else the strike could expand. NBC News correspondent Maggie Vespa has more.
Day 5 on strike and a new deadline.
This is our generation's defining moment, so be ready to stand up.
United Auto Workers President Shawn Fain now demanding America's big 3 car companies, GM, Ford, and Chrysler owner Stellantis, give up major ground, or he says come noon Friday, this targeted strike at 3 plants will expand. All 3 companies say they want this resolved quickly.
We'll continue to sit at the table, work through things, try to find the common ground.
Among the union's demands, 40% pay hikes, each company offering roughly 20% raises. Ford and GM could each lose $40 million in profits per week, more if the union expands the strike to more plants. The impact already rippling through the industry. Some parts suppliers say they'll have to lay people off, something the CEO at Michigan's Cascade Die Casting is scrambling to avoid.
And we're going to go to our people and sit down with them and ask for volunteers to take time off. We expect that the strike could impact as many as 50 to 100 employees. And those are all people that have families to feed.
Among the 13,000 auto workers on strike, Jacob Deshawn, now stuck at home instead of heading to his shift at Ford.
I want to be on the line making vehicles.
The union promising $500 a week. The father of two says it's not nearly enough.
I needed the money, so this strike is not helping me at all in any way.
And sources tell NBC News former President Trump is now expected to travel here and speak to auto workers in the Detroit area next week. UAW responding to that, saying they are fighting, quote, an economy that enriches people like Donald Trump at the expense of workers. Back to you.
All right, Maggie Vespa in Michigan. Maggie, thank you so much.
Well, speaking of strikes, the Writers Guild of America is set to resume negotiations with Hollywood studios today.
The union made the announcement on Monday that it would be returning to the bargaining table. The strike, this one began on May 2nd, now entering its 141st day. Joining us now to discuss, entertainment journalist and pop culture expert Brian Balthazar. Brian, good to have you with us. Negotiations, bargaining table. We haven't heard those words in a while when it comes to this strike. So what can we expect from WGA resuming negotiations with the production studios?
Right. So this is encouraging, to say the least. The first thing they really do is start to read the room, basically. They come into the room and say, are we ready to actually talk? And then I think we're seeing some indication that they are. You know, the WGA, at least the news that they were going to be having this conversation, said, don't expect to hear from us for a few days unless we have something to tell you. So you can already see there's a tone that there's going to be some negotiations and some hints of perhaps some progress. They believe they have some progress on the number of writers. Some possible agreements about AI could be in the works. But the one real standoff is about residuals, but we have seen, and there's some reporting, that the Alliance has provided some streaming data, but they're saying this is for use in a negotiation 3 years from now. So that's still the wild, wild west of this negotiation. There's also one more thing about one-step and two-step deals, and that's the number of times a writer touches a script. They're entitled to a payment for each time they go back and rewrite. So there's a promise of some progress. There's some hope.
Brian, a lot of this, of course, was unfolding over the summer where things are sort of quiet anyway on TV show sets, things like that. But as we're heading into the fall, there's been some drama and there's been some backlash as shows start to return amidst the strike. Yesterday, there were writers striking, picketing outside of ABC's The View. There was a lot of drama this week with Drew Barrymore, a back and forth about her show coming back. Ultimately, it's not. Bill Maher, same thing. What are writers saying about all of this?
Well, you know, interestingly, last week we would have probably thought that the studios had the advantage. But this week now, with Drew backing down, the talk has backed down. Jennifer Hudson and Kelly Clarkson also putting things on hold, Bill Maher as well. And so now the union has actually gained some momentum, seeing that they're going to be some larger effects and some larger unity among people who you thought may have tried to find some workarounds to get their shows going. The union is really excited about what they've seen the past week, and they think it gives them a little bit of an edge going into this room.
So, Brian, we know that we're going to have the writers going back to negotiations. Where do things stand with the actors right now? Any progress there, or is there sort of this, like, unspoken theory that maybe the writers go first and the actors will go after that?
That is exactly right. They're going to be watching very closely to see if the studios are negotiating with the writers in good faith, to see if there's an indication. Because some of the things they do have in common, their concerns about AI, their concerns about streaming residuals. So they're going to see if there's any good faith efforts here. But the truth is even if the Writers Guild does come to an agreement, only a handful of things like those talk shows we just talked about are going to come back. The actors are still going to be, if they don't come to an agreement, holding everything at bay until they come to an agreement. But Marvel Studios, the graphic artists have now agreed to join an international union. So those visual effects artists could also be another step in this ongoing problem that many of these workers are having with studios in general.
And they are essential to those movies. So.
Seriously. Brian Balthazar, thank you very much. Maybe we'll have some news soon.
We'll see. Yeah. All right, so the fall equinox, I believe, is this weekend. Yeah, temperatures heating up for some parts of the country.
There you go. Oh, my gosh. Are you a meteorologist? Angie Lassman
just read a calendar.
Good morning, Angie.
Good morning, guys. Joe's exactly right. We are heading towards late September, so that means we're heading into astronomical fall. It's already meteorological fall. But if you look in parts of the Midwest and northern plains, it really doesn't look like it. Even down through the south, temperatures into the 90s once again. It's been relentless for the heat across parts of the South, especially Texas. Today, you're going to head to the mid-90s, but look as far north as Minneapolis. We're mid-80s. These temperatures are more like, say, July than late September. Chicago will head to 80 degrees, 85 for Memphis. So overall, running about 5 to 10, even 15 degrees above normal for today. As we look ahead to tomorrow across the same region, not much improvement. If you're looking for cooler, more fall-like conditions, we'll still stay into the low 80s in Minneapolis, upper 70s in Milwaukee. Not a horrible temperature. It'll still be a fairly nice kind of day temperature-wise, but just warmer than it should be for this time of year across places like Des Moines, North Platte, Kansas City, all running a little warm. As we head into the end of the work week and into our upcoming weekend, we kind of settle into this really mild pattern across that same region, upper 70s to low 80s for Chicago. For the weekend plans, Cincinnati hits the mid-80s on Friday and then kind of bottoms out into those low 80s for Saturday and Sunday. A little farther to the east, we'll be dealing with rain this weekend, and it'll kind of moderate out our temperatures, but even still mid-70s across the board for a lot of spots here as we get into Friday through Sunday. Now, talking about rain in the short term, we're looking towards the center of the country. That's where we have the chance for some showers, some thunderstorms, and because of that, we'll be watching for a few of them to maybe be on the stronger side. We're talking wind gusts, 60 miles per hour, maybe inch-size hail. The tornado threat is fairly low, so we won't be worried about that, but we're also going to see the potential for some heavy rainfall. We could have some flooding concerns with this, with some of these amounts totaling 1 to 2 inches for the more widespread region, but up to 4 inches as we get through Thursday. This is centered around portions of Arkansas and Oklahoma, that same region that we're looking at for those stronger storms. And we've got to talk tropics because, yes, we still have Category 2 Hurricane Nigel and an area that we're watching off the coast of Africa. But notice that kind of area of disturbed weather, some showers, some thunderstorms that's trying to develop into a low off the southeast coast. Now, this is going to leave us with some soggy conditions really Thursday through Sunday along the east coast. As we get into tomorrow, the low pressure likely to form there, but the rain is going to be drenching for parts of Florida and Georgia. And we'll kind of see that rain work its way up the east coast, impacting parts of the Carolinas, maybe a low kind of separating and moving a little farther to the north. But either way, this means rain for parts of the mid-Atlantic and even the northeast. So Boston to Charleston, I know this is what you want to hear for your Saturday plans. Unfortunately, though, we could see some good amounts of rain in some spots that need it. Widespread areas, maybe 4 to 6 inches. But of course, notice Cape Hatteras, we could see upwards of 3, maybe 5 inches. So it'll be a soggy kind of couple of days. Maybe movies.
No one on the coast will be ignored. Everyone's getting
everyone's getting a little bit of that rain. Our lawns will be happy, I suppose.
Exactly.
All right, there you go. Angie, thank you so much.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.